Good evening. Hello, everyone. I would like to warmly welcome you all to this very special webinar session tonight. As you can clearly see, it is not our usual Thursday evening, but actually Friday evening. So we have decided to give it a special title. We simply could not have held this session yesterday evening because, well, you cannot really host a professional webinar from an airplane just yet, but who knows what the future will bring for us all. And even so, we were still hoping that tonight's session would come together because if you've been following the news, you'll know that in the area where Attila was traveling, the airspace is being cleared very quickly. We even talked to Attila about this, that if there was any problem, he would of course let us know, and we would have to postpone tonight's event. But fortunately, that wasn't necessary, and as you can see, both Péter Molnár and Attila Vidákovics are here. Attila is here with us tonight because, as you probably know, last Monday was the specific evening when I hosted the live webinar, and that was when Attila unexpectedly joined in. If you remember, he actually called in from the car while they were on their long way to Switzerland. We haven't told you about this yet, but the reason we didn't mention it before is partly because it really was a very last-minute thing, but we are absolutely thrilled to share the full story with you now. That week was completely packed with programs and meetings, which, as you can imagine, had to be rescheduled. Plus, there was the next presentation, just presentations and travel, so we didn't talk to you about it at the time. And as soon as Attila got back, he'll actually tell you in a moment that he almost immediately had to move on again. But this way, you'll get to hear about both Austria and Israel, specifically Tel Aviv. And of course, there are still one or two other topics as well that we'd like to discuss with you. So I won't drag this out any longer, guys. I'll hand it over to you now. And of course, I'm here. And when we get to a topic where I'm needed, I'll jump back in.
Hi everyone. So, as I discussed with Péter, from my side last week, the trip to Davos came up completely unexpectedly, but I'll talk about that later. Everything got turned upside down because of it. And then on Monday, as planned, we went to Tel Aviv. I got home yesterday at 11. So Péter will start with the events that happened here at home, since I wouldn't really be able to talk about those right now. But after that, I'll tell you everything that happened.
Hi, everyone. Actually, I just wanted to drop by briefly for a very quick and concise status update, because initially I was the one scheduled to come here, but then I talked to Kuti and asked him to provide us with a more detailed explanation about how things are currently going with Highlandation, the listing, and the related tasks. I don't know if you follow or check the Hydation forums. In the past few days, we submitted the application, and that's really the main discussion, because that's the admission process. We have to set up the XM channel for Hydation, which has been completed technically. So we've started the discussion on the Hydation forum. They asked us for some materials. They requested the audit upload, and they also requested that certain parts of the code be made public. This is in progress, and if things move forward, then Hylation will put it to a vote. What is Hylation? Hylation is a decentralized launchpad in the system. Many of you keep asking when we'll finally get listed somewhere. Right now, I'd say Hylation will be the first listing. Of course, we are aiming for several places, but this will likely be the first because then you want to be able to move freely within the ecosystem. The opening of interchain connections actually needs to be voted on by the Hybration Alliance. In theory, this is just a formality. We have initiated the official public process. Only one comment has come in which requested a few things, a few clarifications. We created a decentralized explorer while someone else made a centralized explorer for it. The validators in the system, the audit, and whether we make it public among the blockchains. And they also wanted to look into some parts of the code. These are in the process of being published. If this moves forward, then it will be put to a vote in the governance of Hydation regarding the XCN connection, which will make it possible for the Mosaic command, which is a command in the Procure ecosystem, to connect and transfer tokens to Hydration. If this happens, then the Mosaic will appear on the Hydration chain, and we will be able to launch a liquidity pool for Hydration with the Mosaic. And that will be the first, now it's 90% certain, that this will be the first market where the Mosaic will appear on the open market. If, by the way, the Mosaic performs well, and that's how they see it, if the price continues to remain relatively stable over time, then later on it will be entirely possible to participate and gain entry into the so-called Omni pool on Hydation as well. But that is certainly something for a later date. You can imagine the Omni pool on Hydation as a comprehensive and diversified liquidity basket on the Mosaic Alpha. which contains every single token available. So it functions in a manner that is essentially similar to a single large balancing basket for every individual token currently listed on the Hydation platform. Specific digital tokens can be included in our listings if they have been established on the open market for a very long time and their trading price remains consistently stable. So quite obviously, they are considered to be highly reliable and trustworthy by the global community. So that is the current status of our selection process. If you are interested in learning more, you can find our detailed official post on Hydation, where once we receive a sufficient amount of positive feedback and formal confirmation from users, we then move forward to conduct a final vote on the necessary technical changes. Because basically, at this current stage, we had to meticulously develop and implement a specialized small piece of technical code, which they will also activate on the chain so that this can finally become possible. So we're steadily making significant progress toward our ultimate goal. That's about all I can say for now. I think it's just a matter of a few more days before we move forward, thoroughly clean up and resolve those remaining technical issues, and then it will be officially put to a community vote. Oh, I truly hope so. Yes, indeed.
It's important. Sorry to interrupt like this, but I just wanted to mention I often get calls or emails about this. And I also talked about this at the Monday meeting, that it's important for you to know that this is not our decision. So, of course, we would like to fulfill the requests that come in. Actually, today there was a meeting. I participated as well. And there were 3 things that Hydration requested. And, they made it clear that they won't be responsible. So we have to do everything ourselves. All the preparations have been made, just as Petty mentioned, but we have no influence over the actual decision. So just as the community will decide here, that's exactly how it will happen there as well. As I often say, unfortunately, it doesn't work like you just walk in and take it off the shelf and it's a finished product. We have to wait for it, even with the best intentions. And as far as we know, this doesn't cause them any problems, especially if we're there. So, of course, everyone is optimistic and hopeful, but we still have to wait for it. There's no fixed deadline, like, say, with official authorities where they have to respond within 30 days. So we don't know exactly when, but we hope that a decision regarding us will be made as soon as possible.
That's right. We're leaving it as it is. And of course, another question that often comes up is what kind of liquidity it will start with when MOS launches on the exchange. This is an excellent question. The total liquidity is about $1.8 million. And the question is what percentage of that is worth allocating for trading, so that we can learn from a text here, because I'll add more to this. We would ideally like it to appear in that way. That is still a subject that requires a final decision. But it is certain that we will certainly not be allocating more than half to one single place. Speaking personally, I would definitely lean much more towards a third.
Thank you. You may have also seen among tonight's webinar topics that we definitely want to talk about the Codex and Mosaic coin conversion. This has been on the table for quite some time now, a very, very, very long time. We've been talking for a long time about eventually reaching this moment, and now we're really here. As we said, this will happen in February. There was a meeting about this at the beginning of the week and again today, where we went over everything once more. Basically, only the final parts of the development remain and then testing. But let me explain to you exactly how this is going to happen. So, sometime in February, most likely in the second half, this will definitely take place in the second half of February. It will work like this. There will be a dedicated interface for this in the web office, where you can convert your codexes. We've talked about this many times, that you won't be able to convert all your codexes, only those codexes that are converted in packages. So in the various packages that included codexes, which you purchased this way, this applies to all our partners who have such codexes. They can convert them at a 20-to-1 ratio. It's not mandatory to convert them. It's entirely up to each person to decide, based on their own strategy, whether they want to convert, not convert, or only convert a certain amount. It's very important that the conversion can only be done once, so you can't do it in a way where you think you'll do it like this and then later change your mind and want to do it differently. You can't reverse it, and you also can't, for example, convert half now and then decide a week later to convert the other half. So you can only make this decision once, of course. Of course, there will be a set time interval for this, a kind of moratorium within which partners must complete this process. So there will be plenty of time to think it over. But let me emphasize again, only once. However, there are those partners who have already qualified for a career level. By the way, there are a total of 13,657 such partners who are at some kind of leadership level, but among them, fewer are actually affected by this. Specifically, 556 people who, thanks to the additional conversion rate, that is, an even more favorable rate, not 20 to 1, but better than that, will be able to convert their Mosaic coin codex at this improved rate. So to break it down, we have 417 executives, 67 senior executives, 47 master executives, 15 diamonds, 6 double diamonds, and we have 2 blue diamonds. So this applies to them. And now I'll go through once more how the conversion rate looks at each career level. And for them, it's not the case that, well, before you get confused, let me repeat a part, okay? So by default, the rule for everyone is that it's 20 to 1. From the executive career level and above, this changes and it looks like this. At the executive level, you can convert at a 10 to 1 ratio, but only 20% of the amount can be exchanged at the favorable rate. For senior executives, the ratio is 5 to 1, and the conversion opportunity is 35%. For master executives, it's 2.86 to 1, and they can convert 50% of their code points of the redeemable code points. For diamonds, the ratio is 1.33 to 1, and from here upwards, so both double diamond and diamond can convert 100% of what is redeemable. But for double diamond, it's already 1 to 1, and for blue diamond as well, it's 1 to 1. 1 to 1, so for them with double diamond and blue diamond, there is no better ratio than 100% and 1 to 1 as you would expect. So this is how it changes, and as I mentioned, you can make a decision only once, and the process itself will look like this. On the platform I mentioned, where you can make the exchange, you will see exactly how much you can use. So you don't have to calculate yourself how much you can purchase this way and are eligible for the exchange, because the system will calculate this for you. You will also be able to see the amount of codex, the quantity that from executive level and above. As I mentioned, the ratios are 20% at executive level, then 35 to 50%, and then for double diamond and blue diamond, it's 100% how much you can exchange at the higher, that is the better rate, with the higher rate. And then there is a window where you just need to enter the quantity. You enter the quantity as a single number. You do not need to specify how much you want from this or that, just one total amount. So for example, if you want to exchange 5,000 codex, you simply enter 5,000 codex, and you still enter 5,000 codex even if you are only eligible to exchange, say 3,000 at the discounted rate. But the rest can, of course, be exchanged at the regular rate, even from executive level and above. The exchange tool will always automatically check the best available exchange rate for the amount you enter. If your eligible amount runs out, it will then switch to the base rate of 20 to 1, but we'll talk much more about this later. However, it is important to note that the vesting period naturally applies to these newly exchanged Mosaic coins. Furthermore, the specific amount of Mosaic coins held in the vesting schedule will be adjusted and will increase in direct proportion as thick. This designated period will typically span between 2 and 4 years long. Consequently, if you decide to proceed with the exchange, the original vesting period requirements will also apply accordingly to all your assets. It's certain that for everyone it will jump. But that doesn't mean that what you exchange now will already move into a higher category. It will only change for that specific amount. So what you already have investing now, of course, that won't change. It's already counting down. But if with this exchanged amount you would jump a category, then the longer vesting period will only apply to the freshly exchanged amount. Please keep in mind that this specific rule will only apply to the current conversion process. Furthermore, you cannot go higher than a maximum of 4 years, nor can you go lower than a minimum of 2 years. As the developers have thoroughly checked the data and performed all the necessary calculations based on what we currently see regarding how much everyone has for the vast majority of people, it will be around 3 years, except for those specific individuals who, I don't know, really. Some people have a very, very significant amount. So that's basically all you need to know about it. Of course, as soon as we see when it will go live or when the final testing is happening, we'll let you know, and also how long the period will be during which you can make this conversion. So you'll have time to think it through calmly. So, as I said, there's no need to rush, but it's important to note that there will be only one opportunity for this, for the conversion. So that's basically all I wanted to cover in this little technical overview. And now, Ati, everyone is waiting for what Betty mentioned and also to hear about what happened to you in the past 2 weeks. So I'll hand it over to you.
But let me quickly ask for a couple of pieces of advice, because I can really go on telling stories for a long time to truly convey how we experienced it and what the processes were or what things happened. I'm really talking about what's relevant. I'd be happy to talk about everything because that way I could convey it better, but then it might get a bit long, or we could split it in two and then no.
I think you can just go ahead and say as much as you want. I just glanced over quickly since there are people here writing in the chat. No, so let me say it again. This is not about a codex abracadabra. It's not about a purchased codex. This is exclusively about those codex coins that you obtained through package purchases. So it only concerns the codex coins included in the package. But no one needs to stress about this because I see that suddenly a lot of questions are coming in about it. The system will calculate it exactly, and you'll be able to see how many codex coins are subject to the conversion. Sorry, Ati, and from this point on. All right.
Then let's discuss roughly, because I can more or less piece it together from memory. So should I talk about it as a whole then?
Right.
I think that covers quite a lot, actually. So as many of you already know, the news came in on Saturday night that one of our friends met with one of the organizers from the World Economic Forum. And there, on one of the stages, we were given the opportunity to present. And of course, we had to take it, so we had to go. But it was already said that we could go up on Tuesday evening. So on Sunday morning, we quickly decided that we would go. And on Monday, we set off. But now I assume that many of you are like I was. I didn't know how the World Economic Forum is organized or what it looks like, even though I follow very closely what happens there. I always pay attention to what is being said there. I was already well aware of the Klaus Schwab situation even before the invitation on Saturday. He founded this event, but now he has been fired. Really, that's an interesting story too. So look it up if you're interested. And how Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, took his place. So I was aware of all these things. But as for what the event itself actually looks like and what really goes on there, I honestly had no idea. Looking back now, I can say I knew nothing. Before, I would have thought I had some idea, but I didn't. So the Davos conference is set up in such a way that the whole of Davos, which is a small town, not tiny, but still a small town, in the Swiss mountains, a ski resort in a beautiful, fantastic location. Obviously, the way they organize it, it's an elite venue, which also plays a role. And the other aspect is security. It's easy to defend. There are only two roads, one going in, the other leading out of the town, and vice versa on the way back. They check everything thoroughly, of course. They even used mirrors to inspect our car, and they searched us much more thoroughly than at a typical border crossing. But that's understandable, since everyone from Donald Trump to all the major world leaders were there. So it's but that's not even the interesting part. The World Economic Forum isn't just a lecture hall with a single stage. Instead, it takes over the entire town. I can't say exactly how many venues there are, but like a huge festival, it definitely happens at hundreds of different locations. There are various themed programs for every kind of industry, every type of participant, region, country, and so on. So that's the World Economic Forum. It consists of countless separate events. If someone buys a ticket, they get a badge to wear around their neck, which contains some kind of chip. And with that, they can enter anywhere. Well, we didn't have anything like that. By the way, the cheapest ticket like this is $40,000. And from there, the price just goes up. I don't even know how high. We didn't have one of those, but actually it's for a single event, and whoever is let in by the local organizers can enter. So we had an invitation, but we started looking around to see what else was going on. Since we knew we were supposed to be there on Tuesday evening, and we also knew that the organizer would get access to the venue at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the one we were invited to. So officially, we could go in there. We started searching online, and now I'll share my screen. We came across the GBBC, which is the Global Blockchain Business Council. We saw their program and thought it looked really interesting, so we sent them an email from the car. Meanwhile, let me share my screen. It spread a bit quickly just now, but here's their website. They have a lot of great speakers, a bunch of exciting participants, and there's an event that seemed really good. So we decided to start there on Tuesday. The program started at 9 or 10 o'clock, but I'll explain later why we couldn't make it there on time. We sent them an email, and I should add that we never got a reply. But in the meantime, well, on Sunday, we also had to arrange accommodation. In Davos, we found only one available place to stay, and it was by no means a luxury hotel. For 2 nights, it would have cost 19 million forints, which obviously didn't make sense, so we chose something else. We found a fantastic place to stay at a completely reasonable price, 45 kilometers away, which crossing the mountains is about an hour and a half. So our accommodation was great, and we agreed that we'd get up early, head over, and see if we could get into this GBBC event, or if not, we'd just walk around, look around, and get ready, etc. Well, we got there a little before 10 o'clock. As you know, one of our colleagues makes a lot of cars, so the town is small and there are very few parking spaces. There are 4 or 5 official parking garages or lots, all of them completely full. And in this tiny town, thousands of cars are looking for parking. So one of our colleagues, there were 3 of us who went, got out of the car and went into the GBBC. And after 10 minutes later, he let us know that they had received our email and were happy to welcome us. Meanwhile, the other colleague and I kept searching for a parking spot. We looked for a parking space for 2.5 hours before we finally found one. For this, we almost had to go to another town, or at least head in that direction, because everywhere there are signs saying you can't park without a permit. If you park there, they'll tow your car, and you can only get it back for a fee of 2,500 francs. So you can't just park anywhere. If you park on the side of the road, say between 2 towns, that's what happens. You can only stop where it's allowed, where you can park properly. Well, we were thinking about whether we should walk or call a taxi, but since we wanted to go into the GBBC, we decided to call a taxi. We called a taxi, so about 4 kilometers by taxi, which took more than an hour, and the ride cost 80 francs. The prices are outrageous, but the main thing is that we made it to the GBBC. By then, it was already quite late, well past noon, but we got the news. And this really says it all. The whole thing is fantastic, but the organization is, well, interesting. That we received the news that the place we were officially invited to from that was taken away, and it couldn't start at 2 o'clock, only at 4, because the main organizers took the stage away and someone else got it from 2 to 4. So everything was delayed by that much. So from this perspective, we didn't regret that we gained a little extra time. Now, the GBBC event itself was really great. First of all, they were very open. They welcomed us warmly, and we had the opportunity to introduce ourselves very briefly. By the way, it looked like this. There were all kinds of, between the panels, there was this, I don't even know, like a 20 to 30-minute break. But a lot of people stayed there during that time because they were chatting and so on. So during one of those breaks, we were able to introduce ourselves publicly, not to a huge crowd, but about 30 to 40 people listened to our roughly 5-minute introduction. The first person who came up to us was from Eve Lenz. We had a great conversation, and she immediately connected me with someone from the technical side with whom we've already been discussing how to connect the blockchain. I also mentioned, by the way, that the highway is in development, etc. They were completely open, so a really good relationship developed there. By the way, I exchanged a few words with the CEO of Cardano as well, though he was rather stuck up, so we didn't exactly become good friends. On the other hand, I started chatting with a guy there about whom I had no idea who he was, but it turns out he runs a Twitter channel with a huge following. Actually, the other colleague who was with us knew exactly who I was talking to. He didn't mention that the guy was an influencer. He just said he was an early Bitcoin investor who now lives in Dubai. He was really cool, very interested. We talked about a lot of things, and later we even chatted a bit more, but by then I already knew who it was. So that was also arranged by the GBBC. We also talked with the GBBC people. They were very open, so we need to keep in touch with them because they even offered, well, we discussed a few things there, but we still have to decide. We're not at the point yet to decide whether we want to become members there. If we do, then we have to go through a process, and then they decide whether we become members, whether we can be members. But regardless of that, they already hinted that next year we might have a spot on the stage, which is really great because there were a lot of serious visitors there and the whole event was very good. However, since it's only proper for us to show up at 4 o'clock, if the event we're part of starts at 4, we walked over. It was quite a long walk. I should add that the road for the cars was absolutely, they keep it clean, but imagine that on the sidewalks, nothing at all. So there's this thick layer of ice on the sidewalks. It's life-threatening. You can only walk by sliding around. So really, the world's most important people are there. Sure, most of them are driven by private chauffeurs from entrance to entrance. But what if someone just wants to take a walk? So this was really surprising. And literally every sidewalk was covered in ice, but we managed to make our way across, luckily without any accidents. We made it across. And then it turned out that the event had been extended by 2 hours because one of the Emirati countries needed the stage. So they took it from there and the event started at 6. Okay. But then what should we do? Because we didn't even try. Since that Emirati event was absolutely irrelevant to us. So what should we do? And in the neighboring hotel, there was some kind of trade conference going on, which was organized by Israel. So my colleague immediately took care of things and they let us in. The things happening on stage weren't that interesting, but out in the hall, there was a lot of activity. So we talked to people there as well. And this turned into a really interesting story. There was a female reporter there. She was really attractive and we approached her and started talking. She said she was from one of the English channels. And here, well, there are important business people here. She's doing short interviews with them. And if we'd like, she could do one with us as well. She said she'd make a 3 to 5 minute segment, and then the editorial team would decide whether to use it or not. We said that sounded great. And she said, okay, but someone else was coming now. She'd do the interview with them first, and then we could go next. So we stood there. The person sat down in the chair, introduced himself for the recording, and announced that he was from SAP and one of the top. When we take the time to look closely at the various elements presented before us, we begin to notice that among the many differences that exist, and even within the subtle spaces found between those very differences, there lies a complex web of unique characteristics that define the essence of each individual component. This intricate process of observation allows us to appreciate the vast diversity and the specific nuances that separate one idea from another, ensuring that we fully comprehend the depth and the breadth of the variations that are inherently present in this detailed comparison of contrasting features and distinct qualities. So there's no need to feel bad about that. But the SAP person was really interested in what we said. So communication started with them as well, and they responded to our inquiry. So that's a huge success story. At 6 o'clock, the Emirates event left that stage. And from then on, it was about another hour before the planned program started. Everything was completely reorganized there. Of course, at the start, there was a bit of disorganization, but everything settled down. Really, we introduced ourselves in a few minutes, but honestly, there was no need for more because you just said who you are. And the point was that we're here. And if anyone's interested, they can come over to us afterwards. And that's exactly what happened. So this event there, this stage, was a libertarian event. As you know, the vast majority of libertarians are crypto-anarchists. So the audience there was basically a crypto-anarchist crowd, obviously made up of those who have already accomplished something in the field. The person I really want to highlight here is a well-known, long-standing name in the industry. Actually, I thought he was Korean and already living in America, but as it turned out, he is originally Singaporean. And although he did live in America, he has lived everywhere. In my eyes, he is a very important person because he also contributed to the operation of WikiLeaks. He was really there from the very beginning. We had a great conversation, and the biggest thing is that after we got home, he kept in touch. And he was the one who encouraged us to continue building our friendship. So fortunately, at the end of next month, we'll both be in London at the same time. So we've already arranged to meet. And now he knows about Mosaic and he's interested too. So we'll see what happens with him. As for his name, I'd rather not say just yet. I don't know where this will lead. What's certain is that a good relationship has started and that this is happening on a Mosaic level. Whether we'll be able to use him to actively promote and market Mosaic, I don't really know yet. But what's absolutely certain is that through him, we'll reach a significantly larger and more diverse audience of people, and that a very good professional acquaintance has been established. That's for sure. The other important thing that started is that really from the very top, specifically from the highest levels of the executive leadership team of SAP, formal communication has finally begun. And that's a truly remarkable and fantastic development for everyone involved. Now, this is currently unfolding and manifesting from two distinct directions, but you can't really compare the two. So this is exceptionally beneficial and highly advantageous. We've met a vast number of fascinating people. And by the way, the Davos conference is perfectly and uniquely well suited for getting to know influential global business magnates and well-known figures in a completely informal, friendly, and relaxed atmosphere. So I think it was very useful. The biggest benefit, by the way, is the SAP connection. A lot of communication channels have opened up, and we don't yet know exactly what will come of them, but we're striking while the iron is hot. By the way, I'd just like to note in parentheses that the trip to Tel Aviv, this one and all the previous ones, so many channels have now opened up towards some exceptionally significant and substantial opportunities, that we're now comprehensively redirecting our entire strategic focus to working on the existing connections we've already established, because we simply don't have the internal capacity to open up any new ones at this time. Of course, if a new one comes along unexpectedly, we'll address and manage it appropriately. But right now, we don't want to proactively pursue or search for new connections. Because if those we're already communicating with really, even if just a few percent, say a modest 5 to 10% range, actually lead to something substantial, that's already an incredibly positive outcome for everyone involved. And you just can't spend every single hour of the day, 24/7, working on keeping all these different threads going. So that's exactly what the whole event looked like. By the way, in the evening, we went back to our accommodation to rest, and the next day, so on Wednesday, we finally began our journey back to our own home. Well, there's not much point in talking about the trip itself. Actually, it's pretty easy to get around Budapest. So from a driving perspective, it's good. It's about 900 something kilometers, rounded up to 1,000 kilometers. But the journey isn't that exhausting. So that's all there is to say about that. But of course, this really threw things off, because obviously we got home very late on Wednesday night, completely exhausted. And on Thursday and Friday, we had to deal with the chaos because, the previous week was already packed according to the original plans. But with this, everything got turned upside down. And of course, we knew that the following week, which is now, would be Tel Aviv. So that was already planned. We arrived in Tel Aviv, and the very first thing the hotel staff did was show us how to get to the shelter. They showed us the shelter itself, etc. So over there, they really expect that because of the ongoing political developments and events in Iran, there were concerns that some serious trouble might arise in that region. But actually, when it came down to it, there wasn't any trouble at all. So apart from the extensive preparations and the fact that it was a constant topic of conversation, we did not personally encounter or experience any other significant disruptions. And through a contact by Monday evening, in other words, specifically for Monday, there was only one single highly important and serious meeting scheduled on the agenda. However, the specific reason it was scheduled for that particular time was simply because there were absolutely no other available time slots that could possibly work for this individual. By the way, this person is the esteemed head of global technological innovation at one of the world's largest and most prominent banks, meaning he is directly responsible for all technological innovation across the firm. And in this specialized field, he is the most senior and highly influential top person at this bank. I would have said with a certain degree of uncharacteristic arrogance, that this bank is among the world's top 5 or 10 largest banks. But before I said something like that, I thought I should double check. So I looked it up, and right now, the top spot among the world's 10 largest banks is Chinese. So this one has slipped out of the top 10, but it's still in the top 20. So it's a huge bank. To be honest, of course, it's obvious that we should sit down, get to know such a person, introduce ourselves. But what I was expecting was that with a bank like this, it's much harder to get anywhere. So it was a huge and positive surprise that he was very open, absolutely understood everything. And by the way, he's an incredible mind. His specialty isn't blockchain, but rather technology and IT as a whole. There was no need to explain to him what substrate technology is. He knew exactly what it was. It's associated with Gavin Wood's name. Of course, he doesn't know the deep technical details, but he was aware of the most important things, and not because he had prepared, but because he's just that up to date. He really liked what we told him, and he explained that at their company, they are indeed looking for new things, seeking innovation. So not only was he not dismissive, he was very open. He did mention, however, that working with them is a very long process, and that it can only work if it is essential that we find an area of application that is exceptionally interesting and relevant for them. And if they also find it highly intriguing and worthwhile, then there are indeed many concrete examples and a significant chance that a pilot project could be launched from it. Usually, they try this out with a smaller, specialized financial institution that belongs to their specific sphere of interest. And from there, things can gradually progress and expand further. So this project actually got officially started and underway. It really did, which is a truly fantastic result for us all. And it's now abundantly clear to everyone involved that he certainly wasn't joking around. By the way, he is simply not the kind of person who would ever squander his own valuable time and energy on something like this. So the fact it is happening is huge. The very next day, we kicked off the morning with a truly massive and highly anticipated technology conference. I will go ahead and share my screen here with you as well. Yes, so this is the tech conference. Suti, you can see my screen, right? Because I can't see what I've shared.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, so Cybertruck Global Tel Aviv 2026. Now, to see how serious this conference is, you have to note that the Israeli head of state, well, I won't highlight it now, but can you see my mouse as well, Shuti?
Yes.
All right, so the Israeli head of state spoke there, then the Israeli president, so you can see here is Benjamin Netanyahu, he spoke there. By the way, right after him, one of Lenovo's representatives came on who talked about, actually, this was a major focus throughout the whole conference, how big a role AIs are playing in cybercrime, both on the two sides. So on the side of the criminals as well as on the defense side. This is very important because everyone is approaching it from this angle. And actually, for a lot of things, the solution isn't to go against AI, but rather to put a good blockchain underneath it, preferably one that a decentralized blockchain, so that there is no entity that can influence it. So from this perspective, it's very interesting. We had a lot of conversations. We attended the presentations we found interesting, but for the most part, we focused on building relationships. Plus, we had 3 scheduled meetings within the event. By the way, the event was incredibly professional. It was organized unbelievably well. There were huge spaces for networking so that people could talk to each other there. There was also a floor filled with meeting rooms ranging from very small to large ones, which could be used as needed. The people we arranged meetings with rented those rooms so we could have our conversations in a proper setting. Now, something else I found interesting, I specifically noted this, was that there was so much going on. And here it is, that this is the former chief technology officer of the CIA. And he gave an incredibly insightful and exceptionally good presentation, which you can actually see right here, specifically about the use of artificial intelligence as a powerful weapon and as a significant threat, explaining in detail exactly how it works. I will now try to put together a comprehensive but short presentation from the specific part he gave on that particular topic today. about how trust will transform in the future and how important a question this is. It's very interesting because you could tell from his words that they recognize the significance of those statements and the message Timothy C. May wrote back in '88 about how the nature of trust would change. Fortunately, we were allowed to take photos, so I have all of his slides. I photographed them all, but let's move on for now. Because the people who are truly and deeply interesting for us, by the way, one of them is a particular guy we didn't actually have a scheduled meeting with at first, but we met there unexpectedly, and I immediately connected him with Petty right there on the spot. And since that moment, they've been communicating and collaborating every single day. It's about a very specific and innovative solution, where obviously our primary goal is to eventually bring it to Mosaic, while they want to thoroughly explore whether a blockchain-based solution would really be the right fit for them. But active work has already started, and this was a fresh connection made right there. An interesting thing, at the exhibitor stands, it's completely normal to have hard liquor out on display. And so during conversations, they hand out these tiny plastic, I think about this, these little single shot glasses, and everyone gets one and they chat while tasting them. By the way, we didn't drink there, not because we're saints or teetotalers, but because we had some very important programs lined up and didn't want to drink. But there we met a team where this whole story had already started. We had, I'm not even sure, yes, 4 scheduled meetings, out of the 4, there was only one where it became clear that we wouldn't continue because it just wasn't reasonable. The other 3 are all companies dealing with cybersecurity, and all 3 clearly understand what blockchain can bring to the table. Among them, there was one that actually uses blockchain. All of them are very open. And from that, one team was especially enthusiastic, and they are really pushing for us to continue. So it's incredibly promising. Right now, our job is to see these existing already started projects through to the end. And if we have to go down these paths, then so be it. It's just unbelievably good. We also had, we had a lot of meetings. There was also 2 of them were really special. One of them, by the way, is a lobbyist with excellent connections. He was very helpful, and he found us very likable. On our colleague's side, it's actually an old connection. I just met this person now. He doesn't really understand the technology that much, but we talked a lot about how his connections could be used for what purposes. We need to carefully consider exactly how we're going to approach them, especially since there are still many new people coming into that space as well. The other person I spoke with was the general manager of a massive skyscraper, which is quite interesting because there are a lot of different companies located there. We had a detailed conversation about what specific kind of service should be launched that he, in his professional capacity as the building manager, would find most valuable. Brings into these companies so that they have to use it, so that these companies will already appear on the blockchain. And from then on, once they get to know it and use it, we can move forward. This is exciting because of document authentication, digital signatures, etc., etc. Honestly, I don't even know if that was discussed, because when Péter was talking, I zoned out, and Csutka, we said that the migration of the IUP has started and the process is already underway. No.
I actually wanted to mention this at the end because Péter forgot, okay?
Then remind me at the end, because I'm basically going to say the same thing, just a tiny bit more in detail. This is important because identity management, so the handling of personal identity is thus, I believe that out of all the blockchains, it will operate at the highest level on Mosaic. Now, identity management is essential for authenticating these kinds of commercial processes, so we're putting together a plan for this. As for getting access to these companies, I won't go into detail now because it's still just taking shape how one can get started with this. The point is, for the skyscraper, this is really, I think it's a skyscraper with 50-something floors, so it's truly a skyscraper. The operator is completely open to collaboration, so that was also very exciting. Now, I'm trying to remember what I'm forgetting, because actually, this was much longer. Let me tell you another story. Not every negotiation was successful. In fact, there were 2 that were clearly not successful. I mentioned one of them there with that company. It turned out that we just weren't looking for each other. That's completely normal. And even so, the success rate is much better than usual. But the other one was actually pretty funny. Through a connection, we were introduced to a crypto blockchain company. Like, here's this Hungarian team. They built a blockchain. You should get to know each other. That was basically our entry through a really good recommendation. There we actually split up, but that's not the interesting part. I went to this company and I know they knew who I was because I know what kind of introduction they got about us, where I'm from, who I am, that we just launched a blockchain. So I arrived and they started showing me their blockchain solutions and began explaining their wallet to me. Well, at that point, they told me to download. Maybe out of politeness, I downloaded it. And seriously, we spent about 20 minutes with them explaining to me how to handle the seed phrase, what it's for, and how I can recover it. I told them 3 times that I know we've developed a wallet ourselves, and besides, I'm familiar with this field. They just nodded along and kept going as if nothing had happened. So I really didn't understand where I'd ended up. It was just funny, but that's how it goes. You get all kinds of experiences. By the way, besides that, we also visited a PR company that works in this field. We've been in touch with them for a while, but now we finally met in person. We also met with people we had already connected with during our previous visit. Those things usually happen online, but since we were already there, we took the opportunity to nurture these relationships in person as well. We even went out to dinner with one of them to a restaurant, which was really great. Well, to put it simply, that's basically the story. By the way, there was another potential partner we talked to, and during our conversation, he offered to drive us to the airport. It was a nice gesture, and we told him thank you, but we'd manage on our own. However, yesterday morning, our colleague's phone rang, and it was him saying he had promised to take us, so we should let him know what time to come. He showed up and drove us there. For us, so these gestures really felt good. It was really nice because obviously if someone does something like this, it means they don't want to forget about us the next day. Well, to wrap things up, I can say that I personally wasn't worried, but it seemed like everyone else was concerned about whether the plane would be able to take off or if they would close the airspace or things like that. But the plane was able to take off. There was no such problem. It was late at night, so I got home after 11, went to bed, and then around 1 or 2 in the morning, my little son started coughing, so he was coughing in the morning too, so I didn't get much sleep, and that's where we are now. That's pretty much the end of the report part. Now, let's take it that Shruti asked me to talk more in detail about the IOP migration. It started about 2 weeks ago, so the development is actively underway. Fortunately, it looks like we're able to keep up a good pace. I don't want to mention any timelines right now, but it's incredibly important that everything works as soon as possible because a lot of users will come based on this, and there will be a lot of users coming with them anyway. Plus, it will have significant news value. By the way, we also talked about this with the partner company abroad, as I mentioned, that we already need to start preparing the communication for it. Honestly, that's all I consider important to share about this for now. AT.
Thank you very much. Regarding the IP, there's still something important, but I think you've talked about this before, if I remember correctly, the last time the 3 of us were together here on the webinar, that we were looking for a bunch of external development teams. Just unfortunately, we just couldn't find anyone at all who would have been a perfectly suitable candidate for us. And in the end, that's exactly why the team decided to take the full responsibility upon our own shoulders so we could really make significant progress. Thank you so much for everything. And of course, we send our thanks to Péter as well for providing all the information, even though he is currently supporting us from a great distance. Don't forget to join us on Monday morning at 9 o'clock sharp for Monday call. We look forward to seeing you there. So we'll meet there. Péter Molnár will be waiting for you next Monday. And any information that is necessary, new or comes up over the weekend, we'll pass that on to you as well. Of course, we'll talk again about the Codex and Mosaic coin conversion too. But as I mentioned, we'll discuss this many more times. And when the time comes, I am going to show you exactly how it works in great detail so you can fully understand and see precisely how to carry out the conversion process yourself. So thank you very much indeed, Attila, for your help. I truly wish everyone here a wonderful, relaxing evening and a very pleasant weekend ahead. So have a good night. Goodbye to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Justin's son didn't show up again. I saw this mentioned among the questions today. He promised to come to Cyprus as well, Justin's son did, but he didn't come. He didn't come to this event either. And by the way, now he promised, of course, each is a separate organization. He promised for the Bucharest event, which will be in March. He also promised the organizers there that he would be present. Well, I'm curious to see if he'll actually show up. You know, Justin's son is a funny guy. We know he likes to make fun of the whole world. As a joke, we said that maybe he actually developed and launched an advanced artificial intelligence that you can send a formal message to if you want to invite him to an event, and that AI is specifically set up to promise everyone that he'll go. But Justin's son failed to make an appearance at the scheduled time. In fact, it was mentioned there that people who are in a position or situation where they're in his immediate professional and personal circle said that, as far as they know, he isn't at all present at the location, at the World Economic Forum either, but we don't know for sure. In any case, he wasn't there, and after this, he won't be in Bucharest either, I say, but we'll see. Well,
obviously, for the organizers, I don't think this is a funny story. I assume they booked him a hotel room, and as you mentioned, the prices are what they are, and I doubt they booked at the same rate you found accommodation for, as you mentioned. So typically, these costs have to be paid.
Well, it's likely that they were brought in. The helicopters, by the way, were coming and going. It was impossible to tell exactly which ones were military for security reasons and which were private, but there were a ton of helicopters in the airspace. So I assume many people stayed farther away and were brought in and taken out by helicopter.
All right, once again, good night to everyone. Have a wonderful weekend, and thank you very much for the evening.
Goodbye and have a wonderful day.